We are very good at killing each other in painful and embarrassing ways. This is something that has been clear for thousands of years. The creativity that has gone into torturing people to death, whether it's with hungry animals, extreme heat, or a never-ending supply of sharp, pointed objects, is truly frightening. You'll need a strong stomach to make it through this video of the worst execution methods ever used. Boiling to death. Traditional versions of this punishment involved slowly lowering the subject, feet first, into boiling oil, water, or wax. However, boiling wine and molten lead have also been used. If the pain wasn't very bad enough to knock someone out right away, they would feel their outer layers of skin being completely destroyed by immersion burns and falling off their body. Next, they would feel their fatty tissue boiling away below. One of the worst ways to be put to death. This seems like something that would only happen to the worst murderers, but history records show that this is not the case. Emperor Nero is said to have killed thousands of Christians this way. In the Middle Ages, though, the main people who were put to death this way were coin counterfeiters, especially in Germany and the Holy Roman Empire. In the meantime, King Henry VIII of Britain started putting to death people who used poison to kill someone. It is shocking to think that this was still done as recently as 2002, when the government of Uzbekistan, run by Islam Karimov, was said to have tortured and killed several people they thought were terrorists in this way.
The Blood Eagle. The Blood Eagle was a style of writing that only the Vikings could do. It mixed violent and beautiful images in a way that no one else could. Before the spinal column could be seen, the victim's back would be cut open and the skin torn apart. The ribs would then be broken off from the spine and pushed backwards until they faced away from the body, looking like bloody, broken eagle's wings. As a scary ending, the lungs would be pulled out of the body and covered in stinging salt, which would cause the person to suffocate and die. There is some doubt about whether this method was ever used, because the only records of it are found in Norse writing. Several experts say that the act we know about today was badly translated and doesn't take into account how strongly the eagle is linked to blood and death in Norse imagery. That being said, the subject in every story is always a nobleman who is being punished for killing his father. The good news for anyone who may have had to go through this humiliation: they probably passed out long before the lungs were taken out of their bodies because of the pain and blood loss from the first cuts.
Impalement. The cruel act of impalement has a long history. Vlad the Impaler, who ruled Wallachia, now Romania, in the 1400s and was the model for Count Dracula, was the most famous person to use it. Most pictures of the process show people being stabbed through the middle and then held up, which is a way that would almost certainly kill them quickly. In reality, it took a lot longer and was much more horrifying. In the past, the stake would be partly sharpened and pushed into the ground, with the point facing up. When the spike was halfway into the rectum or vagina, the subject would be put on top of it. As their body weight pulled them up onto the pole, the partially greased wooden stake would force its way up through their body, slowly piercing organs until it reached the whole torso and tore an exit wound through the skin of the shoulder, neck, or throat. The first written record of torture is from 1772 BC in Babylon, where King Hammurabi directed that a woman who had killed her husband be killed in this way. But the Ottoman government used it during the Armenian genocide from 1915 to 1923, which is still modern enough to be considered a crime. Some stories say that the victim, who was naked, bleeding and squirming in agonizing pain, could take up to 8 days to die. Keelhauling. Some people think that walking the plank is a slightly more humane way to die than keelhauling, which is another common way to punish people at sea. The victim's legs were weighted and suspended from a rope. They were then dropped from the bow of the ship and quickly pulled underwater along the length of the hull, over the keel, the beam that runs longitudinally down the middle of the ship's bottom, and to the stern. This punishment often ended in death because of how badly the victim was hurt, or it was done until the person died. In the days when sailing ships were made of wood, the body of a boat would usually have a thick layer of barnacles on it. The shells of these creatures could be very hard and very sharp. As the sailor was yanked through the salt water over and over, these protrusions would rip the skin off of his body, gouging out raw pieces of flesh and, according to some reports, even cutting off whole limbs or the head. The sailor could be hung from the mast for 15 minutes before being taken back inside if they were still living. To keep the victim from mercifully dying, an oil-soaked sponge with a breath of air would sometimes be stuffed into their mouth. It was mostly used by the Dutch and the French from the 1500s until it was banned in 1853. It was first mentioned in Greek writing in 800 BC. The Roman candle. Many of the worst ways to kill someone have involved fire, like burning witches at the stake in ancient Britain or putting criminals inside the brazen bull and roasting them alive. But the Roman candle is the most inhumane of all of them. People say that the crazy Roman Emperor Nero liked this method. The person was tied to a stick and covered in flammable pitch, which is plant or tree resin. They were then set on fire and slowly burned to death from the feet up. What made this method different from others like it is that the victims were sometimes lined up outside to light up one of Nero's parties at night. Being hanged, drawn, and quartered. This very harsh way of killing was first mentioned in England in the 1300s. In 1351, it became the law that people who were found guilty of treason had to be put to death in this way. There were many people who were punished for treason over the next 500 years, even though the act was meant to be so horrible that no one would ever risk doing it. The person was dragged to the place where they would be hanged, drawn, and quartered, while being strapped to a wooden panel that was then tied to a horse. Then they would be put on a slow hanging, where instead of being dropped and dying quickly from a broken neck, they would be left to choke horribly as the rope tore up the skin around their throat and their own weight dragged them down. Some people were lucky enough to die at this point, like the notorious gunpowder plot conspirator Guy Fawkes, who jumped from the gallows to die faster. After being choked for a while, the drawing would start. The person was tied down and slowly disemboweled. Their stomachs would be cut open, and their intestines and other major parts would be cut apart and drawn from their bodies. Their genitalia were often cut up and ripped out from between their legs. Those unfortunate enough to still be living at this point might have seen their organs being burned in front of them before they were finally cut off. When they finally died, the person's body would be cut into 4 pieces, which were then sent to important places in the country as a warning about what could happen. This was often done at the famed Tower of London, where the head was stuck on a spike and hung on the walls for the mockery of London. Rat torture. Rat torture, which was recently shown on Game of Thrones, is a clever way to do something disgustingly simple. In its most basic form, live rats are put in a bucket and placed on the victim's exposed chest. The base of the bucket is then heated. In order to get away, the rats tear and gnaw their way into the victim's belly, ripping through skin, flesh, organs, and intestines. They are scared and desperate because it is so hot. Rats are the most powerful rodents when it comes to biting and eating, so they can quickly digest food. Not only would the victim be in unbearable pain, but they would also feel the big, dirty critters moving around inside their guts as they died. It is said that in Elizabethan England, the Tower of London had a dungeon of rats, a pitch-black room below high water that rats from the River Thames would come in to torture the people who lived there. However, this practice has been used much more recently. General Pinochet is said to have used the method during his dictatorship of Chile. During the national reorganization process in Argentina in the late 1970s and early 1980s, victims were said to have been put through a version of the procedure in which live rats or spiders were inserted into their bodies through a tube in the rectum or vagina. Bamboo torture. Thin pieces of bamboo have been used as a questioning tool for a long time. However, bamboo has also been used to creatively and slowly kill someone. The subject was tied to a frame over a patch of new bamboo plants. It is said that the Japanese used it on American prisoners of war. The plants could grow up to 3 feet in 24 hours, making them one of the fastest growing plants in the world. The sharp tips of the plants would slowly pierce the skin of the target and then keep growing. The end result was death by slow, continuous, multiple impalements, which is like being dropped on a bed of sharpened stakes and seeing everything happen very slowly. The practice has roots in Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, and Siam, now Thailand, which were countries in the 19th century. However, there is no proof that it was used during World War II. It is possible, though, and the method, which is one of the worst ways to kill someone, has been shown to work. In 2008, a Mythbusters episode showed that bamboo could pierce a human-sized ball of explosive gelatin over the course of 3 days. Flaying. People have been flayed, which is also known as skinning alive, for a very long time. People have been sacrificing animals for sacrifice since the Neo-Assyrian Empire, which began in 911 BC, but it has happened in most civilizations at some point. For example, it was common in medieval Europe to do this as a way to punish traitors, and the Aztecs in Mexico did it as part of their religion. The Aztecs are thought to have skinned the body after the sacrifice. Different cultures have used different methods for flaying, but the basic idea is the same: slowly and painfully cutting the skin off the body while keeping the subject alive as long as possible, and if possible, removing the skin whole. In carvings from the Assyrian period, the process starts with cuts on the thighs or buttocks. In the European way shown above, the process starts with ripping the skin off the feet and lower legs. Emperors Sun Hao, Fu Sheng, and Gao Heng of China told people to have their skin taken off. Usually, death would happen from shock and losing a lot of blood, but in the sad cases where skilled flayers were used, the victim could be kept alive in constant pain for days before they finally died from wounds that were too infected to heal.